Hi there, and finally welcome back to the tiny house. Lots to do here, so let's get started. Back after a bit more than a year. This little fellow, and of course our friends, kept everything nice and tidy. And although everything is quite familiar to me, it feels new and exciting. Almost as it felt years ago when we bought this plot of land, completely overgrown and abandoned. Inside, unfortunately, it's just like a time capsule. Everything looks exactly like the day I stopped working on the tiny house, except for some missing items that we took to our new property. At least the bedroom and the bathroom are already done. So now it's time to turn the former workshop into a living room and kitchen. New light through old windows. Well, kind of. Sometimes it is quite helpful to take some distance in order to make a fresh start. By the way, leave me a comment if you're interested to hear the whole and real story why I suddenly stopped renovating the tiny house 2 years ago and what's changed now that I can continue working on it. But let's not dwell too much on the past and rather turn to the future. My idea is to install plasterboards to the future living room walls. And this means I have to tidy up first to get a foot on the building side. Quite funny, my plan was to carefully sort through all this leftover wood and throw away everything I really didn't need anymore. In the end, it was just one board that I actually threw away. But at least it looks a bit less messy. So now the center section of the room is free and clean, and this gives me the opportunity to relocate these shelf units to this wall, because this is the wall where nothing's gonna happen this time, because as I already mentioned, the plan is to work on this wall and here on this wall. So let's continue. It's unbelievable how much useless stuff I collected over time. Always thinking, one day I will use it again. We have this German saying, haben ist besser als brauchen, which translates to, it's better to have something than to need something. This is what we've got to work with this weekend. This is the original substructure, and there is a wooden paneling on top of it. And here is already hot and cold water for the kitchenette that's going to be installed in the end here, over there in this corner. So first we have to get rid of this wooden paneling.
And another German lesson, in case you're wondering. The word Hausanschluss means house connection. Don't know who painted this word to the wall. Time for a break.
So it's the next day, and I already removed the old cables and removed the old substructure. And now it's quite nice because you can see how this house once was built. And it was completely made out of panels, and each panel is 1.20 meters by 2.40 meters. And this, for example, is a panel, this is another panel, this is another panel. And with this measurement, it was easy for two persons to handle these panels. And this was quite important because it was doable for two persons to build this house. But anyway, that's history. So let's go back to the future. And now I will install the new slats for the new plasterboard.
Although nothing in this house is plumb or square, I tried to build an even substructure for the plasterboards to have a straight wall in the end. These panels that I mentioned earlier are just a wooden frame filled with styrofoam inside and pressed cardboard on top. That's why there is only in some areas enough meat to screw the slats to the wall. Here in Germany it is to code to install all the cables yourself, but you should leave the breaker box to a certified electrician if you don't want to lose your insurance coverage. But with 380 volts at a maximum, this is a good idea anyway.
So now all the wires are installed. We have one wire for the oven and another one for the fridge and a third one for the plug sockets in the kitchen. And now it's time to hang the drywall. Usually you cut them a little bit smaller because, well, how to explain? For soundproofing, you don't let the plasterboard sit on the concrete slab. So usually there is a little gap between, something like a centimeter or something like this. I think it's 1/4 of an inch or 1/3 of an inch. But in this case I put them right on the concrete slab because the walls are quite fragile, and I think when I hang some plasterboards on the wall, maybe it's too heavy. So it's easier to put all the weight on the concrete slab. So let's continue.
No, I'm not the emperor of plasterboardistan. Look, I'm not the only one who's cutting. It is quite important to get the first one right, and the rest will follow. To all of you thinking, but what about the plug sockets? I can assure you I marked all the position of these cables on the ground so that I'll find them again later on when I have to drill the holes in the boards.
So I will install the last boards now off camera, and after that I'm going to call it quits because I desperately want to enjoy the weather. Over the last weeks we had rainy weather here in Germany with low temperatures, and this is the first week that we really have sunshine and nice temperature, and I desperately want to enjoy the nature and the surroundings and the lake here. And yeah, this means for you, we are going to meet each other next week. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.